Please be seated.
I understand we're going to come back to that issue later.
As Your Honour pleases. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Dwyer.
I have finished asking questions, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Bowe.
Thank you. Constable, my surname is Bowe and I am counsel for the Walker, Lane and Robertson families, and you know who they are?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. As you can appreciate, Dr. Dwyer has, if I may say, carefully covered quite a lot of the issues that the family are interested in, but there are some further matters I want to take you through. Before that, I just want to cherry pick some things that came from some of the matters that you've given answers to already. Do you understand?
Yes.
I'm going to go straight to the questions, and if you need context, please let me know, and I'll try to provide that to you.
No worries.
I think I heard you say in your evidence that you did not think that your military service had much to contribute to how you have become a police officer. Did you say something like that?
Correct.
Yeah. You did, I take it, learn how to shoot in the army.
Yes.
And that's also not just shooting with handguns, but with long arms.
Correct.
And utilising other lethal weapons.
Correct.
Those matters came into some advantage when seeking deployment with an IRT, surely. That gave you some advantage.
They're different weapon systems entirely.
All right. The second thing you may have picked up from being in the ADF would have been an understanding of command structure.
Yep.
And a willingness to abide sometimes difficult directions for duties for you to perform.
Yes, I understand that.
And one of those matters is that rank is everything. That is, if somebody of a higher rank is directing you on a matter, that's something you must comply with, correct?
Unless it's unlawful, yes.
And if it is unlawful or you've got a query about that, you've got means by which to at least raise your concerns about any such directions.
Yes.
Is that fair? Okay. The second thing I wanted to ask you from this morning is that you spoke about getting some sort of trauma first aid experience when you were a civilian.
Yes.
Was that through the Ronin program?
I believe it was a side business to them, not from them directly.
Sorry, I've just got a medical condition. I just can't hear as well.
Oh, sorry.
Can you just say that again?
Put this a bit closer. I think it was a side business. It wasn't actually themselves. I think it was a side business that they did some medical training through and all that.
But the nature of that course was for you to acquire further skills to use weapons in a civilian context. Is that fair?
It was the course itself. For the weapons part, was just a weapons familiarisation thing.
Right.
In case anyone hadn't ever used weapons before.
So it's familiarisation with particular weapons. Is that right?
Yes.
And what particular weapons were you seeking, or did you get familiarisation with?
I can't remember what the rifle was called, and I think it was a Glock.
Right.
I think.
A Glock, that it's a short gun, and a rifle, a semi-automatic gun?
Yes.
Okay. Now, just you spoke about this morning about a conversation you had with a lawyer concerning a proposed bail condition concerning Constable Rolfe. Do you recall that?
Yes.
I picked up from that you said that the lawyer told you to wait to be arrested or something like that.
Yes, he said it's likely that you'll be arrested as well, and to wait at home and for that to occur, or for anyone to tell you any different.
Yeah. I don't wish to go anywhere near the advice that you were given. What did you think you might be waiting to be arrested for?
I have no idea. I believe the lawyer said the last time there was a shooting in Western Australia, I think it was the same fella running this investigation.
I really don't want you to waive your privilege unless you're doing it knowingly.
Oh, okay, sorry. But yeah, I don't know. That was just advice I had, that I was waiting to be arrested, possibly, and wait and hear otherwise from investigators or anyone else.
But specifically, it was a concern in relation to the shooting, I take it.
Yes.
Now, just going back to the days following 6th November, you have said in your statement, page 32, that you've been researching this target 2 or 3 days beforehand. Do you recall that?
So researching him.
You said you're constantly checking the target list that comes out on the emails.
Yes.
He was an arrest target, and that said for assault police, I believe.
Yes, that was a document that came out all the time. I checked it at the start of every shift.
Yeah. That's what I wanted to get to. So as a matter of routine, you would look at emails that identified arrest targets for police generally across the Northern Territory. Is that right?
They were localised. It was a localised document, so it wasn't across the Northern Territory. It was, I believe, the document's done up here at Alice Springs for Alice Springs and like for the general.
The Southern Command around Alice Springs, I take it.
No, I don't think it had any of the bush areas, any of the bush stations. I don't know if it covered that. It was more a document for us on how to do our job and who to look out for and who was on what bail conditions, areas to patrol, area hotspots and areas where high crime had been attributed or areas where people wanted more patrols and that sort of thing. It was just a document to help us do our job.
Sorry. Yeah. I think you mentioned that you had a sense that you, as a member of the IRT, would likely to be called upon to pursue this particular arrest. Is that fair?
Not me personally, but I thought the IRT would be involved in the arrest after the axe incident.
All right. And just turning to Constable Rolfe, I won't essay all the things you've said so far about it, but can I just give you 6 points to see whether or not you agree. Firstly, he had become a member of your patrol group, correct?
Correct.
And you had, in that capacity, worked closely together?
Sometimes, yes.
And you got to observe the way in which he conducted himself as a police officer?
Sometimes, yes.
And including in arrest situations?
Yes.
From that, you learned to trust his instincts. Is that fair?
Not really sure.
What I mean is, I don't know, but I imagine if you're going into a hostile situation with another officer, one of the things you want to do is develop a trust in the way that person conducts themselves when they are with you.
Definitely.
And if you had concerns about that, you'd raise it with them or someone else, correct?
Definitely. I trust everyone I work with.
Until proven wrong, I take it.
Well, anyone I jump in a car with to go out on the street, I'd trust that person.
Yeah, that's why I asked you. You trusted his instincts as a police officer.
Oh, yes. Well, in that context, yes.
Yeah. And his capacity as a police officer.
Yes. And
is it fair to say he, to your mind, had good leadership qualities?
I don't know about that.
What deficiencies do you say he had, such that he does not have good leadership qualities?
Well, I'm not saying he didn't have good leadership qualities, but he didn't have any rank.
No.
Or anything like that.
I'm talking about natural leadership qualities.
There's no such thing as a natural leadership. Leadership's taught.
Well, I won't disagree. I won't enter into that debate. But what I'm asking is that from you watching him, he was a natural leader amongst men in the way he conducted and held himself.
He was confident.
That may be one aspect of it. He was confident, he was capable, he was good at what he did, correct?
Correct.
And he was brave. You found him to be a brave police officer?
I suppose.
Now, the last thing is, you've mentioned a couple of times that you are of the lowest rank within the service.
Not in the entire service, but at the time in reference to our patrol group or the IRT or anyone that was at Yuendamu.
And from that position, you are one that would ordinarily just follow the orders that you are given, correct?
Correct.
And follow the lead taken by other police officers in your patrols.
Correct.
Now, just leaving aside the substantial discussion we've had about the documents at the Yuendamu police station and the emails, right? Highly important. I'm not saying they're not. Now, just get to the issue that no matter what documentation you'd seen, no matter what conversations you had, you acknowledged with Dr. Dwyer that in your first interview, if nothing else, there had been a plan on gathering some information and some intel on Kumanjayi's whereabouts, correct?
Correct.
And there was a plan about hitting the house at 5 o'clock in the morning to effect the arrest.
Initially, as my understanding.
Yeah. So, forgetting whatever other detail, that was the plan as you understood it as you stepped out of the Yuendamu police station.
No.
Sorry, I'll take it one step back. That was the plan as you understood it following whatever conversations you'd had with Julie Frost.
Initially there, Julie was involved in all of our conversations prior to us leaving
All right.
the station.
All right. Now, what you have said to us candidly yesterday and today is that the change from that plan is as into something going straight to House 577 is something you just don't know how that has occurred in your mind as you sit here now, correct?
Correct.
Now, as you know, submissions will be made that that challenge that concept, and I'm not going into that territory. Do you understand?
Yep.
Okay. Now, assuming that your evidence now is that you have no knowledge of how it occurred is to be accepted, may I suggest that there's three, possibly four possible explanations for this, and I'd like you to comment on that as I put them to you, okay? The first is that there was a conversation in which you were a part about which you just simply can't recall. That's one possibility.
Possibly.
Correct? Secondly, there may have been a conversation which informed the change, but you were not part of it. That's another possibility.
Also possible.
On that issue, you, however, would discount that because you believe you were there for all the conversations concerning the plan.
No, there was periods of time where I wasn't with everyone.
Okay, so at this critical part when this issue might have been discussed, you may not have been there. That's one possibility.
Possibly.
Okay. The third is that there was a conversation in the direct terms as being put to you by Dr. Dwyer, and you are just deliberately not telling us about your recollection. That's a possibility.
No.
I know you reject that, but in terms of objectively, that's one possibility, is it not?
It is unlikely.
You reject that.
I do.
And the last possibility, if I may say, is that after the debriefing, which ended with what you had said in your first interview, namely a 5 o'clock arrest, that there was in fact no direct conversation about what you would do instead, but things just unfolded that way.
Sorry, can you say that again for me, please?
What happened was there was a change at which yourself and the other IRT members took a different course to the idea of a 5 o'clock arrest. You accept that. When you stepped out,
Yep.
right, you accept that there was a change in the timing at the very least, if not the context of what you're going to do. Fair?
Fair.
And that could possibly happen, could it not? Even with no conversation, if you were just following the lead of what somebody else was doing.
It is possible, however, it seemed very clear when we were leaving Yuendamu station that is exactly where we were going and what we were doing.
Oh, I understand that, and that's why if I may say, such focus has been placed upon the fact that you might be being a bit disingenuous about what in fact happened in the station. But I'm not going into that territory for the moment. I'm trying to explore the fourth possibility that Constable Rolfe went about his duties because he is a capable, goal-orientated police officer, that he was in the car with you and he just drove up to House 577 and the rest of you just went lockstep behind him in the conduct that he was undertaking. Is that one possibility?
I think I was driving.
But he directed you where to drive.
Yes, he had a...
So take that issue out. That's a bit of a distraction. He took you to 577.
Yes.
And I suggest that there's one possibility that he thought he could just simply go find Kumanjayi and arrest him because he had such confidence in his capacity as a police officer, and that you followed lockstep behind him. Is that one possibility?
That sounds more like his evidence than mine.
No, I'm talking about your evidence because you are saying that you don't recall a conversation, but you in fact acted lockstep with him. Do you understand?
Yes.
And that's why I took you to your respect for his intuition and his capacity and his instincts. Do you understand?
Yes.
And you would respect that if he thought the right way to go about what to do, you would just follow him in what he was doing. Is that fair?
Fair.
That's a possibility here.
Possibility.
A reasonable possibility. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. The second issue is that it's well understood that you had been told that there was a community funeral in the community around this time. Is that fair?
Yes.
Now, on that issue, did you take on board that information simply to give you intelligence to assist you that it's likely Kumanjayi would be there?
The funeral, I didn't realise until a long time after that it was actually a relative of Kumanjayi Walker, his grandfather, in fact. When I found that information out, I felt shamed.
Why did you feel ashamed?
I don't. That's it just seems very insensitive to arrest someone at their grandfather's funeral. That I didn't know it was his grandfather's funeral at the time. I found out about there was a funeral in town, I think, when we got to Yuendamu. I didn't see a risk assessment, so I don't know if there was an urgency or what urgency there could have been to arrest him at his grandfather's funeral. But I definitely did not have any good feelings about finding out that it was his grandfather's funeral.
Okay, thank you for that. But may I ask you this more practically? Your sense of shame and respect, does that come from an understanding of a cultural reason to perhaps defer an arrest, a non-urgent arrest, or is that simply a sense of human recognition that it seems such a tragic thing?
I think more human recognition. I don't think that should be done to anyone unless there's a valid risk assessment, and that I very much regret that.
Does it highlight the fact that you did not know, in fact, that the reason the arrest plan that Julie Frost had prepared talked about a 5 o'clock arrest was to give due deference to that issue, that is, to not arrest him during his grandfather's funeral?
No, it wasn't.
Well, you didn't know that, but isn't that a breathtaking omission in terms of your knowledge, given that had you in fact understood that the arrest plan had been devised to take into account that very thing that you're ashamed about?
Likely, however, I know those funerals can last for quite some time. They're not go to a funeral, go to a wake and then continue on. They can go for quite some time.
Well, if it's not very urgent, it doesn't much matter, does it?
No.
So I'm not sure why you added that comment.
As in, well, 5 a.m. the funeral, 5 a.m. the next day or even the day after, the funeral may still be going on.
Yeah, but the point being here is that even though you knew there was a funeral, you didn't sit there and calibrate what impact it may have on the timing of the arrest.
No, I thought that information was provided in terms of there was more people in community now because of that.
No, but what about it being at 5 o'clock the next day and not that night?
I didn't associate the two.
One of the things you said in your first statement at page 7 was that you told them, which I assume was the other IRT people, not to expect too much an outcome. Double lung shot, he isn't going to survive. You're taken to that briefly by Dr. Dwight earlier, correct?
Correct.
And that was an assessment you made because of the location of the bullet wounds and that, in fact, there was more than one.
Correct.
And does that come from just academic research or from physically having seen that sort of injury before?
I used my common sense, and at the time, it wasn't until days later that I found out he was actually shot 3 times. At the time, I thought he was only shot twice, and that one had exited on the other side. And from where the bullets appeared to have entered, it appeared that both lungs or that area are going to be damaged from that.
I know that, but I was asking you the source of your knowledge. Does that come from academic readings, or does it come from actually being in a real life situation, seeing that sort of injury before?
I think it just came from common sense that you need both lungs to breathe.
Okay. Have you not seen a person with that sort of injury before?
I've seen people with injuries like that before.
Yeah. So, and were there fatal results to those situations?
Yes.
So surely that informed part of your knowledge.
Some, yes, I suppose.
And I'm not going to go into any great detail on these matters. I will touch on these things later. But so seeing that sort of situation was during your military service?
Yes.
And was that in terms of combatants or of colleagues?
Not of colleagues.
Okay. So, does that mean combatant?
Well, look, I've signed non-disclosures in terms of operations and things like that. So
But I'm not sure the non-disclosure would go to identifying whether in fact it was somebody that had been shot by your forces as opposed to one of your colleagues.
I'm not.
Anyway, if you're not aware of what his non-disclosure is, unless it's specifically relevant and you want to make those inquiries, I will move on.
Thank you, Honor. Now just go to another subject matter. In your statement at page 15, you said they started pulling out phones and filming us, yelling that we had no respect. Then you added, it wasn't a safe situation to be in for us. We had to get out of there. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And that was moments after the shots had been fired, correct?
Correct.
Now I just want to ask you 6 things about this. The issue of safe situation for us was what you were only referring to the IRT in Donaldson, correct? The us in that concern.
Correct.
As to get out of there, you were referring to get away from people who were taking photos and yelling that you had no respect. Is that fair?
There was a lot of people coming. In referring to the people that had the phones and taking photos, that was just in the immediate vicinity. There was people coming from everywhere.
And the people coming from everywhere, none of them made any threats to you?
Not that I saw.
And none to any of the other IRT people?
Not that I saw.
Nor to Senior Constable Donaldson?
Not that I saw.
Now, do you accept that this action had no regard to the health needs of Kumanjayi?
No.
You don't accept that?
No.
Do you not accept that somebody that had suffered that sort of injury would be best supported by staying still, immobilised, and receiving treatment in situ?
Possibly.
Well, not just possibly, that surely from your knowledge, that's the best way to preserve or attempt to preserve life, that is to keep them immobilised and give them medical attention in situ.
I'm not a doctor.
Right. Secondly, it would have been more comfortable for him, given the seriousness of the injury, for him to be in his mother's house with his family around him, given the dire state of his health. You'd accept that?
Definitely.
The real question was how he could quickly get medical support, correct?
Correct.
And in that sense, you already knew when you went out to the Yundamu that the nurses were not going to be there when you were conducting your policing duties, correct?
Correct.
Did it occur to you that given that you were brandishing or using or bringing with you serious weaponry, that there may be a possibility that the guns may be used?
Maybe.
Well, you don't pull out a gun unless you're going to use it, do you?
Sometimes you do.
I understood part of your training was you don't pull out your gun unless you're willing to shoot.
Unless you're willing to.
Yes.
Correct.
And in these circumstances, there was a risk, was there not, of somebody being injured, given that you're going as armed as you were, and given that you had a dog that was potentially going to be used to chase down somebody.
Correct.
Didn't think that that might involve some deferral until you knew what medical support is available?
That's above me.
Above your rank?
Yeah, I don't make those decisions.
I know you don't make those decisions, but is that not a matter of concern, that being sent out to use your guns potentially, knowing that there's no medical support in that community?
Yes.
Do you think you might have raised that with those giving you the direction to go?
Sorry, that I might have raised those?
Yes.
No, I did not.
Your basic mantra is that you'll follow the directions that you're given and just do those things. It's not for you to question anything.
Not to not question anything, however, that wasn't something that I had questioned.
Do you think you might in the future if you're in the same situation?
I think that is something I'll definitely question in the future.
Have you that fear of retaliation that you were expressing in that sentence, safe situation for us, etc. Have you ever been involved in a situation where there was a violent reaction from bystanders to what you were doing?
Yes.
And in those circumstances, I think you said earlier that was not in an Indigenous community.
Sorry, I don't recall
Might
that.
be getting you confused with Hawkins. Have you been asked about this before by Dr. Dwyer?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, let me just detail it out. Have you been in a situation where you've been arresting somebody and others have intervened violently?
Yes.
And has that happened in a community or in another setting?
In Alice Springs.
Finally, insofar, did you think about, or was there some discussion? Should I continue? Yeah. About the notion of a fear of payback?
I don't know if any of that was discussed at the time.
All right. That certainly wasn't part of your thinking.
My only goal at that point in time was to try and provide what first aid I could.
I can understand that. Now, just the last topic that I want to cover goes to your military service. We've heard a bit of detail already of that from Dr. Dwyer. In the documents that we've been provided, there's some information about matters you said at various points in your military service. I want to just ask you some questions about that. At one stage, you were asked in your application to resign in 2015 what you enjoyed most about serving in the Army. You recall that question?
No.
And your answer that's attributed to you is being a sniper. Now, firstly, you may not recall that, but is that in fact true?
So when was this?
2015, page 22 of his application.
For here?
This is his application to the police.
Application to resign from the ADF.
Okay.
I don't recall saying that.
But is that in fact true? That
It is.
You enjoyed being a sniper?
I did.
What was it specifically about that?
I'm not sure I can answer that.
I'm just a bit confused at that answer. I mean, you accept that when asked what you enjoyed most about being in the army, you nominated a particular skill, sniper, but you can't explain why that is the case.
That was the job I did the longest.
I see. So the one that you had most experience in,
Yes,
and therefore that's why you enjoyed it the most. Is that your answer?
probably.
Okay. Now, in terms of your military service, I take it that it involved, at least on the first occasion, a degree of military training.
Yes.
And how long did that training program work before you were deployed?
I think it was 14 weeks of basic training, another 12 weeks of job-specific training,
Oh, sorry, I just didn't hear that second answer.
another job-specific, so depending on what area of the military you're going into.
And the area that you went into and stayed in for the entire time was being an infantryman.
Correct.
Is that correct? And that, by way of design, is in the unfortunate circumstance that Australia deploys infantry into war zones.
Correct.
And I take it that appealed to you.
It was one of the things of the job that you have to do.
You have some choices, I take it, and you chose that.
No, you did not have a choice once you join.
So you're just trained to be an infantryman,
Correct.
and then from that you can have other choices following on from that. Is that correct?
From then, once you sign the dotted line, the Defence Force own you, and you do what they say and go where they tell you to go.
Okay, well, insofar as that training, and for those who might be curious, I'm referring to information from the Declaration of Ned Dobos, which is brief item 1029. It doesn't need to be brought up, but this is the basis for the questioning. Did the training include strategies to desensitise you to violence through repetitive training?
No.
For example, I think we've all seen the old war movies involving bayoneting a burlap sack, for example.
Yes.
That's what I mean by, that's a violent act, stabbing somebody with a bayonet, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And you would have been repetitively being taught how to do that effectively to harm or kill the person you'd be stabbing, correct?
Yes.
And in addition to that, were there instances where people putting enemy uniforms on balloons filled with fake blood or using heads of cabbage covered in tomato sauce as targets instead of real humans?
I've never seen that before.
Was there some process of using computer simulations to recreate the experience of combat?
I don't think so. There's an electronic range, but not. I don't know if there's any program that recreates combat.
Do you accept that to be an effective soldier, you must be willing to kill when ordered?
You have to follow orders. That's an unfortunate part of the job.
Yes, but I'm not making a value judgment about war, right? I'm just talking about what the training was. Mm-hmm. One of the things that you're being sought to train is to make sure when commanded you take steps which have fatal outcomes without hesitation when necessary, correct?
I haven't really gone into the psychology of what they teach or why, but I'd imagine so.
But you yourself would have had to move from civilian to being somebody that was capable of following a command to kill, correct?
Yes.
And in the task of doing that, did you become confident after this training that you could discharge your duties as a soldier in combat warfare?
I'd like to think I could.
And you felt capable of using weapons to kill?
I suppose.
Rifles, pistols, correct?
Correct.
Hand grenades,
Correct.
knives?
The Defence Force don't do any knife fighting.
Okay. and hand-to-hand combat to, in fact, be able to use lethal force.
I don't think they do that either.
Okay. But certainly you became comfortable with your training that you could use those weapons if and when ordered.
Yeah, I suppose.
And was part of it so that you would not think about the person you're killing.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Did you think about the consequences of what you're doing if you were going to shoot somebody?
It was just a job in service to the country. I didn't sit there and dwell and think about any outcomes or possibilities.
You've expressed empathy several times in your evidence in a reasonable way about various things in this case. Did you have a sense that you would have any empathy about the people you were ordered to kill?
I don't believe I was ordered to kill anyone.
You may not have been. Did you not do any actual military service where you had to use weapons?
I've got a non-disclosure for operations.
I'll stay away with that for the moment. But insofar as your training, per se, that involved you being able to do those things without too much hesitation. Is that fair?
Correct.
And the mark of a good soldier was to perform those sorts of very difficult actions without hesitation, as you say, to protect your country.
I'm not sure if that is the mark of a good soldier, but that sounds like part of the job.
Yeah. In your training, were there those who trained you in these areas? Was there the usage of referring to enemy combatants in a way that didn't regard them as humans, as men and women? For example, to refer to the in the training schedules, to refer to the targets with racial attributes like gooks or sand monkeys or commies or things like that.
No.
You never ever heard that at all in the army?
No, any training that the Defence Force do around enemy forces is made up entirely of a false country that doesn't exist, and populated by a false people that don't exist.
And in that way, to regard them as the other, that is not us.
Like a separate armed force, depending on what their tactics or capability, referencing of whatever thing the Defence Force is doing at the time. I don't know as to the reasons why and all that. That's not my area of expertise.
Okay, and that reference to foreign, mythical foreign countries, did that have shorthand references to the people when you're shooting at people at all?
Not really, no.
Was there language, for example, instead of saying you are ordered to kill someone, did you hear language such as to service targets, for example?
Yes, I've heard things done.
The term service targets is meant to mean to go and kill them. Is that correct?
Service targets?
Service targets.
I don't think I've heard that expression.
Which expression did you agree to when I asked?
So I thought you said, have I heard a combatant called a target?
I see. Well, you certainly have heard that, target.
Yes.
And what about servicing a target?
I've never heard that expression.
What about checking? Have you heard that word used in the way in which your duty should be exercised?
Checking?
Yes.
In reference to shooting someone, or
Well,
as
checking,
in, I've heard checking a lot, as in like checking your equipment, checking on your mates,
Sure.
checking.
No,
Do you mean it in terms of like saying checking as in that is to shoot someone?
Checking the target, meaning killing the wounded.
Oh God, no.
No? Now, when sorry, without going into the detail, were you in fact involved in active combat?
I said I've got a non-disclosure
Okay,
around
all
that.
right, all right. I just need to know the bounds of what you can't answer. I don't know. There was some reference in your material that you were asked about the possibility of making a claim for compensation. Do you recall that? And your answer was along the lines of no, but I may in the future.
For
It may have been for lost money or
oh, sorry. What is this? Who's asked me this?
when you were in the ADF.
Oh yes.
You recall what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
What was that all about?
Any injuries occurred during my time in the military?
Yeah, and injuries, both physical and non-physical.
I spent 14 years running around with kit that was sometimes heavier than me. Obviously, that takes a strain on your joints and everything. And
Physical strain.
yes,
Yeah. Were you also thinking about any mental strain experienced from either the training or the service?
no,
Your answer was not as of yet, however, will be. Do you recall giving that answer?
no, I don't. But I haven't made any compensation claims from them.
Now, upon your, I've got two more questions. Upon your discharge from the last time from the ADF, did you get any information that might help you to deal with any mental health issues that arose from that service?
I highly doubt it.
I just didn't hear you.
I highly doubt that.
That is, you highly doubt. Does that mean you did not get?
I don't think so. No.
Did you feel as if you needed some counselling and support given what you'd been through?
The period of time when I got out is very different to how it operates now. I believe there's even a Royal Commission into how all that operates and
I understand
veterans
it's
and all
done
that sort of
in Darwin
stuff.
Right now, I understand. But insofar as when
But
you
there was pretty much no help from the Defence Force or DVA with anything. Once you say you're leaving, they cut ties and don't care.
So, firstly, none offered, correct?
I don't think so.
Certainly none provided.
No.
And then from your point of view, whether speaking from back then, I guess both, did you feel as if you needed some support when you left the army?
Not in that manner.
But thinking back, do you think you needed some support when you left the army in terms of mental health issues?
No.
Thank you, Honour. I have no further questions.
Mr Mullins.
Thank you, Your Honour. Constable Kirstenfeld, my name is Mullins. I appear on behalf of the Brown family.
Good morning.
Now, your military career ran from 2001 to 2016?
With some breaks in between, yes.
Yes, and you're justifiably proud of your successful career in the military?
Yes and no.
My learned friend, Mr. Bowe, was just asking you some questions about some questions that you answered in some of your military application forms, where you said or suggested you might be making claims in the future for some sort of injuries.
Perhaps, yes.
Yeah, and it's the case, isn't it, that I know there are different views about the generosity of the DVA, but one can claim for things like an injury in a rugby match whilst you're playing for the military, and you can claim for that 20 years later.
I'm not aware of that.
Don't know that. Okay, all right. In any case, the service that you gave was over an extended period of time, and part of that involved some medical training.
Some, yes.
Yeah. Can I just ask that document 7080, which is the second statement of Mr. Kirstenfeld of 21 November 2019, be put up on the screen, and we go to PDF page 26. If we just scroll down a little, please. Might have the wrong page. Apologise, Your Honour, if we can just have one moment.
Maybe 36 or 37, there's conversation about injuries.
Oh, yes, that's it. That's page. I apologise. It was statement 1, which is document 7079, I'm told.
It's 26.
Page 26.
Have you got it, mate?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Keith.
Seven 76. Sorry, 7-79.
Thank you. Now, if we just scroll down, we see there you make reference to your 3 operational tours overseas to East Timor, Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yep.
And then you say, I've spent 13 years in the Australian Army. I've done extensive medical training and treating of gunshot wounds and traumatic wounds. And all that was the main thing that we do. I've also done private courses, private military contractor courses, Bodyguard International and so on. And you've done a Cert 3 diploma in first aid management, which is mainly treating traumatic blast injuries and gunshot wounds.
Correct.
And then we scroll down to the next paragraph, and you describe there that you identified what you thought as a
Pneumothorax.
Kumanjayi had suffered a pneumothorax.
Correct.
Now, can I just say for the record and for the family that I'm going to discuss an issue that may be distressing at this point in time. You talk about in the next paragraph a tension pneumothorax and a hemopneumothorax. And the tension pneumothorax, correct me if I'm wrong, is air that's trapped in the pleural space between the lung and the chest, or inside the chest cavity.
Correct.
That's right. And the a hemothorax is blood in the same cavity.
Yes, or in the lung.
Yeah. So a pneumothorax is a combination of 2 of those.
A what, sorry?
You talk about this in the last paragraph. A pneumothorax is a combination of a pneumothorax and
Hemopneumothorax is the blood one. Tension pneumothorax is air.
all right. So in this situation, you identified when you were at the police station that Kumanjayi had or was developing a hemopneumothorax.
I didn't know which type or anything, but a pneumothorax is what occurs when a penetrating injury occurs into what is the lung space and cavity. That's what you try and prevent with the patches over the top, but it's impossible to treat on a first aid base. It's only manageable until you can get them to first aid.
Sorry, I didn't hear that last statement.
It's only, I can't treat that. You can only do first aid to try and limit and manage that. But a pneumothorax is what occurs when a penetrating wound goes through the lung space, and trying to delay that and prevent it for as long as possible is the idea of the first aid.
But the training that you have done helped you to understand that it is possible to treat a pneumothorax. It's possible to treat that if you've got the appropriate equipment
Correct.
and the appropriate personnel.
Correct.
Now, you can't conduct a surgery on the spot, can you? And you're not qualified to do that.
No.
But you can stabilise the patient for long enough to get them potentially to surgical treatment.
If you have the right equipment.
That's right. Well, it's a combination of things, isn't it? It's the right personnel and the right equipment.
Correct.
Now, in this situation, you did your very best to stabilise Kumanjayi.
Yeah, I wish I could have done more, but I tried.
But you simply
With
didn't
what
have...
limited everything I had as I tried.
But you simply didn't have the equipment or the trauma kit there to be able to do that.
Correct.
There was another person who was a nurse who also had not dissimilar skills to you. I'm just going to read to you the skills that she had for treatment of these sorts of injuries. This is from the evidence of Cassandra Holland. It's at transcript 1411. She said, "I've always chosen to work on call. I love working on call. I deal with medical emergencies, heart attacks, respiratory problems, extremely ill children. I've worked on children who have been near death. I've worked on adults who have been near death. I've worked very well with surgical emergencies. I've worked with stabbings. I've worked with, severe limb trauma. There's not much that I haven't worked with in either a remote area or in a major hospital." Now, if you were able to have her there to assist you with your skills and a full trauma kit, do you think you could have stabilised this patient, Kumanjayi, to have him moved on at least for treatment elsewhere?
I don't know. I'm not privy to what his internal injuries were, but from my first aid point of view and my perspective of what I saw, I may have been able to stabilise him a little bit longer. Without knowing the details and all that, I could have given it more of a try with the better equipment.
I mean, you're in no position and you don't have the qualifications to say whether he would have survived or not, obviously.
No.
But in terms of moving him from that emergency response situation to getting further treatment, having another person on board with very good skills and a proper trauma kit would have been a great assistance.
But yep, I'd never say no to that.
Now, you asked some questions about the moments before the shooting or around that time, and you observed some people banging on the fence.
Correct.
And you said to counsel assisting, or it was suggested to you that might have been those people alerting the community to the presence of police.
Correct.
But that didn't occur to you at the time?
No, I heard the commotion and the banging around the side, and like in hindsight, I thought I went around and saw that that's what was going on and where they were directing their focus towards. So that's how it appeared then at that stage. But initially, when I heard the banging, I was wondering what it was.
Well, you agree with the suggestion that what those people might have been doing is notifying the community of the presence of police, but the reality is that it could have been a whole range of different things. It might have been just their expression of their own angst that the police were there.
Perhaps.
It might have been trying to tell the person inside the house, if there was someone inside the house, that the police were there.
Perhaps.
It might have been trying to distract the police from what they were doing in order to give the person notice of what was happening.
Perhaps that one would have been a good one that did distract me to it.
Right. It did distract you?
Well, I went over to it.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you've asked some questions by Mr. Bowe about your departure from the house after the shooting, and this time, I hope I'm right, document 79-080, page 33, please. After the shooting, you went and got your beanbag rifle.
Correct.
Why was that?
I'd heard shots fired over the radio, and I'd heard 2 gunshots. So I went to the car, got the beanbag shotgun. I had absolutely no idea what had occurred. Pardon me. So for more force protection, and then I grabbed the beanbag shotgun and went to where the shots were fired from.
And did you actually know those two officers had gone inside the house?
I think so. I think there was a radio communication from one of them that said they were going to clear the house, and I said I was going to stay where I was.
All right, so this is the second, thank you. This is the second interview of 21 November 2019. Just want to take you through some of these passages. And you're asked, after the incident happened, shots fired, being called, how did the community then sort of what happened? And you say, so I was around with the big lady banging on the fence. And then if we can just scroll down a little, we can see in the next paragraph, you were thinking, shut up, etc. And you heard bang, 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 like they're doing it everywhere. They're banging all over the place, trying to get his attention. Does that suggest to you when you said they get his attention, as in get the person who was inside the house attention?
Yes, as I said, that that all happened a lot quicker than what is sort of written there. It was all sort of very instant, and the thought of that going on all happened at the one time, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. And then you say in the last four lines, shots fired, and at that moment I'm still running towards my car, ripped the shotty off the back seat, and then ran over to that house. There's just people and dogs just swamping us. Now the next paragraph, just before you go on, the people swamping you at that point in time were mainly women and children?
I don't think I saw any children. I didn't really pay too much attention. My main focus was the people closest to me, yes. And like what would the person that I would represent as the most threat to me would be the person closest to me. So my focus would be on that person. Then obviously if they're no threat, then the next. But the people around me that I saw were mostly women.
Okay, then
I think from the best of my memory.
Can we just scroll down a little further? Now, you were asked, I know, it was all going down, happening pretty quick. Do you sort of recall how many people at this stage were sort of getting around you? Answer, I only was concerned about people that were in our immediate vicinity or within like spear throwing distance. Yeah. Have you been speared?
No, I've not been speared.
Are you aware of any police officer who's been speared?
No, I don't know any personally that have been speared. Or that have told me that anyway.
Did you see a spear at all in the near vicinity?
No.
Why was it that you had a fear of being speared?
Use the terminology of spear throwing distance as like that's the most, what I would perceive as the most threat at that stage, that sort of distance. I'm not saying that there's spears and they're going to throw spears at me, but that sort of distance is the sort of distance I guess I'm referring to. I guess a most likely weapon in a community would be something like a traditional weapon, being a spear or something like that.
I was just curious that we're talking about something within a few minutes of the event happening. You're worried about getting speared.
Not so much worried about getting speared as I said, that distance.
All right. If we just continue on then. On to the next page, please. And then, but they were generally young females with mobile phones out. They weren't overly, they were yelling and aggressive and yelling out that we didn't have respect. There was probably more dogs there attacking poor old Adam Ebel than there was people. But yeah, we're in the process of not being murdered ourselves. Two things out of that paragraph. The first is the young females were holding their mobile phones and recording you?
Yes, there's a lot of people just running all towards all of us.
So if they're holding up their mobile phones, did you see anybody holding their mobile phone up and some sort of weapon?
Not that I recall.
The second thing is they were saying to you, you didn't have respect. Can you remember the words they were actually using?
That is the exact words that I remember.
Well, it wouldn't be we didn't have respect.
You don't have respect.
Okay. When you reflect on that, do you think you're acting respectfully?
At that point in time, my focus wasn't being sensitive or anything like that. My focus was what's happening someone's been shot and injured, my focus changed from that to we need to get some help for this young man.
The next line, there was people, we were in the process of not being murdered ourselves. Now, you used that word murdered. Did you expect you were going to be murdered?
No, I don't think so. We were leaving that area for our own safety and concern. I don't think that I was going to be murdered once I leave there.
But does the word murdered mean anything other than killed? I should say there's probably another component to that, but for the purposes, it includes a component of killing, not just injuring, killing, doesn't it?
Yes. Yes, it can mean just being attacked and injured and all that.
Now, do you understand that when members of the community and the women who had their phones up taking pictures of you and making the point that, from their perspective, that you weren't showing respect, do you think, on reflection, that saying that you thought you were going to be murdered by them is offensive to them?
I can see that, yes.
Now, was there any previous knowledge that you had that led you to believe that you were in danger, or were you relying upon everything, just what was happening there and then?
Just what was happening in the immediate vicinity around me.
All right. Now, shortly afterwards, you came back to the station. Do you recollect Derek Williams and Warren Williams attending at the station at all?
No, I do not.
You did your best to assist in the care of Kumanjayi, as you've described.
Yes.
Can we just quickly go through to page 45 to 48? Your Honour, I realise I've run a little over time. I apologise, but I will just be a few more minutes. And just go down. Sorry, that's good. So you say there's the person asks you questions about the people outside, and you say you thought they were going to start jumping the fence and that they might smash into the station and so on. What was your foundation for believing that the people outside would start jumping the fence or smash into the station? I'm
just sort of relaying what my concerns of what the safety possibilities could be. I don't know if that was actually a concern that is what's going on and all that, but the front of the police station is glass, quite easily smashed. The fence isn't overly high, quite easily jumped. I think I'm just more talking about what concerns and what possibilities there are, and that. I'm not saying that is what is happening now. They're not jumping the fence. They're not smashing in. But I think I'm more saying this is what my concerns are, or what it could be.
Yes, precisely. It was your perception of what might happen that was frightening you, not actually what was happening.
Correct.
Because no glass was broken.
I don't know.
Nobody jumped the fence that you know.
Not that I'm aware of.
All right. Now, finally, did you drive one of the police vehicles out to the airport?
Yes, I did.
And did anybody hold a briefing before you went?
I do not recall. That was, I think by that stage everyone was in quite a high stress level, but I'd imagine there would have been some kind of briefing before we all went, because we all went together and drove there, so there would have been something.
Was the role of the ambulance discussed?
I don't know.
Did you drive your vehicle back through town?
Yes.
Was yours the vehicle that was struck with the rock?
Yeah, every window smashed but mine.
And how fast were you driving through the town?
I have no idea.
Could it be up around 80 to 100 kilometres an hour?
I highly doubt that. I don't think you could get one of those vehicles up that speed and that straight. And that was just as we left the airport. That sort of distance, you wouldn't be able to get a Hilux up to that sort of speed.
It was dark?
It was.
A lot of children around?
It was night time, so yes, it was dark. There was a lot of people around.
Nothing further, thank you, Ron. Thank you for the indulgence.
We might just press on a little bit longer if that's all right. Any other questions?
Yes, Your Honour, I've got some questions.
Yes, Miss Wild.
And I wonder if I might use this left-handed survey. Constable Kirstenfeld, my name's Beth Lyle and I'm a lawyer in Alba.
Morning.
I'll try not to be repetitive and I'll take a few issues if I may. You left the army in 2016.
Correct.
Yes, and that was to come back to bed with your wife.
Mostly, yes. It was change of lifestyle.
You said in your evidence yesterday that you unfortunately made the decision to leave the force.
Yes.
And that was because you enjoyed your time there.
Yes, I had a lot of friends there, and as you can imagine, spending a lot of time there, it's quite an enjoyable part of my life. It was quite a large part of my life, and change is always, I guess, a little frightening.
You've enjoyed moving to the Northern Territory though?
I have.
And the lifestyle here?
Yes.
And you liked working in the IRT?
Yes, I did.
It's busy, that's what you said.
It is.
And you particularly like the search and rescue aspect of it?
It was my favourite, yep.
Now the IRT is the most similar section of the police force to the military. Would you agree with that?
I maybe. I suppose you could make that that connection to it, but my role in the military was a different. My time in the military was a different experience to doing the limited call-outs with IRT.
Okay. How so?
Well, I think most of the stuff with that I did with IRT. Apparently, I did a few call-outs, but I don't recall those. Unless some of the search and rescues were IRT call-outs, I'm not sure. But like I didn't do a search and rescue in the military. That was my main thing that I did in IRT. My deployment to Docker River to provide support for the cross-border team for firearms stolen. I never did anything like that in the military. I didn't provide support for a cross-border team or anything like that. So it's just a different job to what my time in the military was.
You like being busy?
Yes.
And at work, you're active. Would you agree with that?
Used to be.
Officer Eberl said of Constable Rolfe that his reputation was for being energetic and he was happy to look for arrest targets. He was proactive and energetic. The same could be said of you. Would you agree with that?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Well, if someone says that about me, they say that about me. I wouldn't describe myself as that.
Okay. Well, the aspect I'm going to is that you're happy to look for arrest targets. Would you agree with that?
From the arrest document thing, yeah, that's something that we used to do regularly.
Yes. And you're happy to look for arrest targets?
Yes, I'm happy to.
And again, this is a similar aspect of the role in the police force that would be similar to the work in the military. Would you agree with that?
Looking for arrest targets?
Yes.
No. I don't think I ever arrested anyone in the military.
But you've got a specific target that is similar as a goal. It would be a goal-oriented work that that you can do for the day. Would you agree with that?
I'm not really sure what you're asking. Sorry.
All right.
Is there another way you could ask that? Maybe, perhaps.
I can try.
Sorry.
Yes, you're happy to look for arrest targets because it's a goal-oriented part of the job. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know about goal-oriented, but it was that was something that needed to be done. There wasn't someone. Most jobs for the police, what happens is you get assigned a job, and that's that person's job. But the arrest target thing is anybody's. If anybody finds this person, if anybody does this. So yeah, being proactive while doing your work, and you're doing extra things. That's keeping busy.
Okay, so there'd be a notification that there was an arrest target, a warrant out for someone's arrest. That would come over comms and you'd go for it, is that right?
Oh, no, not over comms. It was, like I said, a daily emailed document. that came out, and there was usually a couple of people on there that people were currently looking for whatever matters.
So that's something that you'd often put your hand up for, is that right?
Not put your hand up for it, like I said, it was just an emailed document, so you print that out, and then as you're going about your business, if you come across one of those people or you go to that same house where that person lives or anything like that, then you do that job as well as whatever else you're there for.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the call out to you, Endermoo.
Mm-hmm.
When you got the call, you thought you knew what it was for, is that right?
Yes.
And that's because you'd said that you had been looking for that arrest target for a week.
Yes.
And in fact, it must have been a shorter amount of days.
It must have been.
Yeah. Because it was in relation to the axe incident, which was from the 6th of November.
I think previously prior to that axe incident, he was wanted for his breach of bail. I think that originally was one of the reasons why I'd gone to look for him.
Yes.
So not just the axe incident, because I think that happened as a result of that same thing. They went there for that same reason, and I think we'd done that as well here in Alice Springs. Was while we were at Walbury camp, checked that house.
After you received the call to go out to you and Endermoo, you checked with your wife?
Yep.
And she said it was okay, presumably?
Yes.
And you, so you said yes. You were asked if this would mean extra pay or overtime. You thought yes, overtime.
Yes, I'm not sure if I was rostered on that day though. I think that question was asked of me.
Yes.
If I was rostered on for like an evening shift, I'm not going to get overtime for that evening shift that I'm already rostered on for. That's a bit, you know what I mean?
Yes.
But any hours worked before and after that, I would obviously get overtime for.
It wasn't your main motivation for agreeing to attend, was it?
No.
It was to be part of the team.
Yes.
And you had been looking for this particular arrest target prior to this?
A couple of times while we were out that way.
And because of your 15 years in the Defence Force, you're confident in your skills particularly?
No. I'll let you know if I ever do get confident enough in myself to say I'm a confident person, but I wouldn't describe myself as that. If other people do, that's nice, but I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm a very overly confident person.
Okay. And in fact, you're very humble about your rank, aren't you? You've said several times that everyone's more senior to you.
Yes, I'm just a constable.
But you would have to acknowledge that humbleness, put aside, that many of your skills are far superior to other officers that you work with.
Skills that probably don't equate.
Not at every aspect of the police force, but certainly in arresting someone.
No, look, you're trying to refer to my time in the Defence Force, I take it?
Yes.
Yes, like I said, I didn't arrest people in the Defence Force, so arresting someone is something I've only done in the police.
In training in the IRT, and we've got evidence that was every 5 weeks, there was an opportunity for training.
Correct.
And you participated in that?
Most of the ones, yes.
And in some of those you shared your skills, is that right?
No, I don't think so.
Well, in particular, the close combat drill training, I think it's called. You've mentioned in your statement that was one of the that was training that you're familiar with, that you're able to pass on to your fellow IRT members. Is that right?
It's training I'm familiar with. I didn't run them through any training of it. The way that it was taught to us was different to the way that I'd been taught. It's one of those skills that it's one of those things that changes every year depending on who's instructing it. The way it happens gets better or different depending on it's a tactic of moving through buildings, what's the best way to do it? And there's several different ways to do it.
It's also training in how to have a close combat, so physical contact with armed weapons, is it not?
It's probably poorly named. It's the CQB, as what I know it as, is moving through an urban setting or buildings, and that, like how you move as a team and a group.
And that's training that you did with the IRT?
Yes.
Right. And that was different from the equivalent training that you'd received in the Defence Force?
I didn't do the urban package for Defence Force. My job wasn't that.
So who conducted the training in the IRT for close combat?
Lee Bowens. We did that on the at the actual course. I think it was 2 weeks. We did that.
That was a 2-week course?
To
Or
get,
2 sessions?
no, a 2 week course to get it. Was it 2 weeks or 1 week? I can't remember. That we conducted our training to be in IRT, and that was one of the components of it. Was the CQB, the moving through urban terrain. It's probably what it should be named. That sounds a little bit less combative.
You've used a number of military words in your evidence in the trial and the committal, as well as the statements, and I'll just read out a couple of those. Force multiplier is one. What do you mean by that?
As in, like, however many people are in an area, you put more people there, you've multiplied what force is there.
Right. So to give support to an existing team. Is that right?
Yep. Yes.
Right. So when you say force multiplier, the IRT were being deployed to give support to the Yuendamu station. Is that right?
That was my understanding once we got there that was to occur as well. And recon meaning reconnaissance, Correct.
information gathering,
Correct.
and roll out, I think you've used to mean leaving the station.
Yes.
Now they're military words, would you agree with that?
Saying recon like that definitely is. I don't know about the others if they're a military word. Perhaps they are. Like I said, I spent a long time in the military, so maybe some terminology and speech I use is exactly that, without me even knowing.
Yes. You've said to Mr. Bowe that there was no counselling upon leaving the Defence Force, is that right?
Correct.
And there was no specific training that you underwent in the 6-month training course, the Northern Territory Police, that focused on the difference in the use of force in the military and in policing. Is that right?
That's correct. There's, that's sort of a.
That was a long sentence.
Yeah, no, I just find it a strange question. Like, there's no training in the police force to teach people that worked at Bunnings how to not stack shelves when they get here either. But
yes.
I just.
Yes, that's right. But the point that I make is that there's a difference between the use of force in the military and in policing. Do you agree with that proposition?
Yes, I understand that. Yes.
Yes, and there's no specific course for people ex-militia joining the police force that would explain the difference in practice, the use of force.
No, there isn't. Yeah, I like the way you worded it. Then that was much it. Sorry for misunderstanding there.
We are looking to learn from this experience, and in Tasmania Police, it's the only jurisdiction that have it, but they do have a course which is focused specifically on the difference between the use of force in the police context as opposed to the military environment.
True. That's good.
Do you think that you would have benefited from such training?
I don't know. I haven't done the training, but that sounds good if that's a concern that people have. But it seems like two completely different jobs to me. It's two completely different aspects. I understand that I'm not. It's a different thing altogether. It's all different to me. So,
Right.
being a police officer isn't the same as being in the Defence Force. The
Yes.
the way I conduct myself and the rules and that are different. So I don't,
Yes.
for myself personally, I don't see that I need that. However, I can see that that might be beneficial
Okay.
as a,
Well, then, can you explain to us the difference in the use of force in the policing versus the military context?
that would that would be entirely based on what the mission of the Defence Force was.
You agree it's very important to appreciate the very different approach of the military versus the police force.
Correct.
I now want to talk about community policing very briefly. Prior to the arrest of Kumanjayi Walker, prior to leaving the station, you didn't inquire as to whether you could consult with the local Aboriginal community police officer, Derek Williams, did you?
No, I did not.
Why not?
I don't know. Well, not something that came to my mind.
Do you agree that he may have been a very useful resource in obtaining a peaceful arrest?
Very much so.
And in fact, you do acknowledge the use that ACPO Williams could have been to you back at the station after the death of Kumanjayi Walker.
Yeah, I didn't know that he'd attended the station after that.
Okay. In your body-worn statement, in your body-worn video, sorry, we've got a transcript of that. And this is after Kumanjayi's passed away, and you're looking at leaving the police station. And you state that maybe Derek could speak to the community, saying that we're taking him to the hospital, meaning Kumanjayi Walker. Do you remember saying that?
No, I do not.
But in doing so, you do acknowledge that that he, in fact, could be an excellent resource in assisting communicating with members of the community.
Definitely, I knew Derek from Alice Springs, and I knew that he was from Yuendamu.
But you only seek to engage him at that point, and that's to assist you in deceiving the community, with a view to sustaining the calm so that you can leave the station. Do you agree with that?
It appears so. I don't recall this conversation or anything.
Thank you. I've got no further questions.
Okay. Thank you.
I note the time, it's 1:45. I am trying to get through this witness. Mr. Zishi Vanarski, do you have any questions?
I have a few questions.
How many do you have, Mr. McMahon?
I'm allowed to speak quickly, less than 5 minutes.
Okay, let's do that.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, we're doing the live stream back up, I think. We're good.
So, Councillor, you heard that. We'll try and go through this quickly. My name is McMahon, for the current group committee of Yuendamu, which is a justice committee, and we're looking at big issues. None of my questions are critical of you, but you've served in the military more than probably anyone else who turns up on this brief. I'm going to ask you some questions about language. You've been asked a few, I've got a few more. And just so you understand the context, the whole question of the militarisation of the police force in the Northern Territory is an issue that the people in this room are considering. Do you understand?
Okay.
Okay, so I'm looking at the similarity of language between police and military, in particular infantry, which you have a lot of experience with.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you about a few words and you just comment as quickly as you can for the purposes of what we're doing. You agree that talking about patrolling an area is military language?
No, that's more police.
Okay. Patrol groups, military language?
Police.
You don't have patrols in infantry?
You don't have patrol groups.
Right. Do you have patrols in the infantry in Australia?
Yeah, patrol in that term isn't a group of people, it's an act, a thing that you do. You walk to an area being patrol.
Yes. You talked yesterday about snatch and grab. of a target. That's not military term, or is it?
I think it's both military and police.
It's certainly specialist military term, isn't it? But not standard infantry. Would you agree with that?
Correct.
Clearing a house,
Both. I've heard that. Both.
definitely military term though.
Yes.
You spoke today about a target being a combatant.
Uh,
Asked questions by another barrister.
yes.
And a target in military term is either a person or a thing to be killed or destroyed.
It can also be an area.
Yes. All right. So it's a military term. Operational readiness, military term.
Yes, I've heard that both in police and military.
When people talk about cam gear, as in camouflage gear, military term.
No, I'd say that's a civilian term.
Is in the military for camouflage gear.
Uniform.
What about when you paint up your face? Cam paint.
I don't know. I don't.
Have
Couldn't-
you ever done that? Use camouflage paint on your face?
As a standard procedure, yes.
It's called camouflage paint. Isn't
It is called camouflage paint on the
Well, for instance,
packet,
when
but
you're IRT doing a green training, you know what I mean by that?
yes,
We've heard some evidence there was a week of green training, a week of black training.
yes.
You know what I'm talking
Yep.
about there?
Yep, I recall that now.
And the green training is essentially infantry style training, isn't it? Where you're moving towards a target through the bush, cover and concealment, that kind of work. Is that correct?
I wouldn't say that's more infantry style work, but it was
That's
just showing how to move in, or like how to wear a camouflage uniform and walk in the bush.
Walk is also crawl in the bush, conceal your approach to a target.
I don't know if we did that. I can't remember. Oh, I think we did, yeah, because I remember getting that salt bush all through me.
You've used the term extraction, military term.
Yes.
You used it in the context of leaving you to move
Yep. Well, then definitely.
because you felt there was a situation where it may be necessary for the police union to move to leave in a hurry because of some pressures that they felt, and that would be an extraction. That's the concept used.
Yep.
And that's a military term, correct?
Yep. I've heard it in both.
Yep. You use the term mission quite a lot, a military term, to go on a mission.
Yeah, I suppose you could use that as you could say that's more a military term than anything else.
It's a very military term, isn't it?
Yeah.
Generally, your mission today is to do the following. Standard stuff, isn't it?
Yes, it's like a whatever the goal orientation is.
You asked about the term force multiplier a minute ago. Force multiplier is a very military term, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
It means to increase your combat potential of the unit.
Increase the numbers, yes, or the potential.
Combat potential and the effectiveness for carrying out a mission.
Mhm.
That's what it means, isn't it?
Pretty much, yep.
Do you agree that on the 9th of November, 2019, when you left Unanoo Station on a mission to find and arrest Mr. Walker, do you agree that the way that the IRT conducted itself, namely as a group, I will say patrolling, would you agree that you were patrolling the area around 577 and the houses there, you were moving in on 577?
No,
You wouldn't use the word patrolling for that.
no.
What word did you use?
We drove up to the house.
Yeah, but when you got out of the cars, you're moving around the house, people are moving in different positions. You've got the bloke with the dog in one spot, you've got police officers beginning to encircle the house, watching different exit points. What do you call that?
Cordon?
Cordon, just,
That sounds like a cordon.
you don't agree with, all right, okay. When you were doing that, and moving around the house in the way that you were, one of you had open carry of a military style rifle, Marmalite 15.
Okay.
Do you agree that the way that the IT conducted itself at that time, moving towards the house and then later with 511, same idea, coming over the fences, surrounding the house, spotting the exits, open carry military weapon, do you agree that the whole set of movements had the look of a military operation?
No.
And why not?
Police uniforms on.
Just because of the uniforms?
No, like that's how we operate in the police. Like as a whole, the way you've described it isn't how I would have saw that. When I got to 577, I don't think I jumped a fence and surrounded the house. I think I walked up to the front door and knocked. And then at the other place, I spoke with some people and didn't jump their fence. I had no tacit consent to go inside their property, so I
Did
didn't.
you see other IRT people jump fences?
No, I didn't.
Okay. You can just accept it happened on video.
I'll accept that.
If you're a small military unit of 4 or 5 people going into a village to clear a house looking for a target, would you have moved in a similar fashion?
No.
If it was a non-hostile village?
No.
All right, I'm not going to go into your military tactics. We'll just leave it there. Thank you.
I understand Mr Sutner has some questions.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Sutner, thanks, Dr. Dwyer, for reminding me that Mr. Sutner is here on the phone. Yes, Mr. Sutner.
Thank you, Your Honour. I know we're getting close to lunchtime, and I think you've seen from what goes on before that I will be relatively brief.
Thank you.
Constable Kirstenfeld,
Hello?
my name is John Sutner, and I represent Sergeant Bones. I'm sorry you can't see me, and I'll be brief. Constable, you're aware that Constables Ebel and Hawkins have already testified in the course of this week.
Yes, I am aware.
Yes. I discussed with them the proposition that had been put that there was a culture of racism in the Northern Territory Police Force, and particularly in the IRT. What is your experience of the IRT? Was there such a culture of racism from your point of view?
Not that I was aware of.
Yes. It was also suggested that the use of unnecessary force is resorted to when not required. What is your experience of that?
Not that I am aware of.
Yes. Now, I want to dwell a little bit on Sergeant Bowen. He was the OIC of the IRT, correct?
Correct.
And Constables Ebel and Hawkins said of him that he was passionate about maintaining the IRT at optimum capability. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I agree with that.
And they say he was equally passionate about policing and securing the communities in remote areas. Do you agree with that?
So what was the last one? Securing the communities?
Securing the people in the remote communities.
I'm not sure.
Protecting them.
I'm not really sure.
No,
I don't have any knowledge to that. Sorry. He was very passionate. The first part, I agree with. He was very passionate as a police officer, but I've not heard him talk of remote communities.
Okay. But you know the IRT regularly did most of its work in remote communities. Is that correct?
Yes.
And can I accept that you never found Sergeant Bowens to be disrespectful of those communities or the people in them?
No, not in my knowledge or experience.
Would you describe him as an honourable, diligent and professional member of the force?
From me working with him and from what I saw, yes.
Yes. You have been shown the text that has been attributed to him.
Yes.
Do you agree with what Constables Ebel and Hawkins said, and that it is totally out of character of the man that you know?
That is extremely out of character. That I was quite taken by surprise that it was that person and that text message.
Yes. Have you ever heard a racist utterance or observed racist behaviour from Sergeant Bowens?
No.
And have you experienced Sergeant Bowen's insulting colleagues in the manner described in earlier examination today?
No, I haven't.
No further questions, Your Honour.
Thank you.
We're up to about 20 minutes, so.
Okay, we'll do that after lunch.
Sorry, no, that's okay. I was using it for another purpose. No, I gave you. I sent those two cases that they referred to. No, that's all right. I didn't.